Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Guest interviews include entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Be sure to listen up. This is important because it's your money. Your money. Be sure to listen to Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
Good evening and welcome to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, broadcasting live from beautiful Wildwoods of New Jersey on 98.7 The Coast. Very excited to be here. Our two guests this evening will be in the 7 o'clock hour, credit expert Nathalie Noisette. She's going to discuss with us uncover the hidden strategies you need to easily achieve massive credit score success. So that should be an interesting conversation with her. That is actually the title of her book that she wrote about achieving credit score success. And our second hour guest in the 8 o'clock hour is President Emeritus of the Mises Institute and author Douglas French. He's going to talk to us about rising rents and cheap money flowing. So apartment prices are soaring. And that's really, I should have read it like this. So apartment prices are soaring? Because that's the way I should have read that. Because there is a lot of cheap money in the apartment price market right now, compliments of your government tax dollars. And so we're going to discuss that and whether or not it's a great idea to have a house or rent. The conventional thinking is that it's better to have a house than it is to rent. But I have a feeling that Douglas French has other things to say about that. And if you've never heard of the Mises Institute, by the way, spelled M-I-S-E-S, very, very enlightening, very informative economics think tank. And I just love the Mises Institute. And to be quite honest, they had slipped my mind for a little bit. And I said, I wonder what the Mises Institute is up to. They're one of the very first guests that I had on Money Talk with Melanie when I started the show. And they're up to quite a bit. But if you want to know the fundamentals of economics, the Mises Institute is the place to go. The best of the best scholars and authors and commenters on all things economics are at the Mises Institute. And so I'm very happy to have Douglas French on the show to discuss this topic with us this evening. If you have not done so already, you should be following me on Twitter at Money Talk Mel or on my Facebook page at Money Talk with Melanie. What did I do last week? I just did one hit last week on Newsmax. We talked about Joe Rogan and, how people are trying to cancel him. One of the reasons is because people thought that he was anti-vax. He had some unconventional thinkers on his podcast, which, by the way, is like the number one podcast in the universe, basically. He's got over 11 million listeners to his podcast, which is more than most hit TV shows. 11 million ears on his podcast. And so he was not a fan of the vaccine, decided not to take it. And, you're not allowed to decide not to take the vaccine. That's the thing. And he had some doctors on his podcast that talked about, and of course I'm referring to the COVID vaccine, some doctors that talked about reasons why perhaps you shouldn't take the COVID vaccine, and the left just lost their complete minds about him possibly having that with so many listeners, and they're trying to cancel him. So their most recent attempt to cancel Joe Rogan was this montage video that was circulating on the internet about him saying the N-word 12 billion times, and 12 years ago when he said it. I never saw the video. I have no interest in seeing someone say the N-word 12 years ago. I know this is probably going to come as a shock to a lot of people, but I really, unless you're calling me the N-word directly, I really don't. It doesn't, I think it shouldn't be said. Should never use that word. I think it should, if it was up to me, the word would be abolished. I would cancel the N-word. But the N-word exists, and to be quite honest, a lot of people use it. And a lot of young people use it. And you know, I don't like it. I don't think it's a good look. I think it's a very bad idea. It's a racial slur. And just like, you know, all racial slurs, people who are polite don't use them. So to say the least. So I just think it should be obvious that you shouldn't use that word. But Newsmax asked me about whether or not Joe Rogan's podcast should be taken from him and whether or not he should be canceled because he did this 12 years ago. And I said, absolutely not. And I'll tell you for two reasons. For one thing, podcasts are voluntary. If you want to listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, then go listen to his podcast. If it offends you so much that he said the N-word 12 years ago and you don't think that you should listen to the context or why, you're not considering the fact that, you know, just about every rap song for the last 30 years has gratuitously used the N-word, that a zillion very famous comedians use the N-word, again, gratuitously, and no one says a thing, and they're not canceled. Again, not coming up with reasons to use the word, but I'm just saying in fairness, and if we're going to be intellectually honest, should somebody lose their job or their podcast be taken away simply because they use that word at some point in time? We live in a free country. We have a free amendment. The podcast will be as successful as the market will bear. He has a $100 million contract with Spotify. If when that contract is over, he doesn't have the ears on the podcast, it will go away. That's just how it works in this country. And here's my second reason for not wanting to cancel: racist language, Confederate flags, KKK hoods, you name it. Anything and all things racist. If you're a racist and you want to wear your racist t-shirt, I say have at it. I don't think that racist people should be canceled. I think that we live in a free country and you're free to be racist. As a matter of fact, I'll do you one better. As a brown person, black person, whatever you want to call me on this day, I want to know up front if you're racist so I can stay away from you. So this is why I don't why are we having people go underground with their racism? How does that make sense? And how do you think you're helping people of color by doing that? You are not helping people of color by having racists go underground. Because now we can't tell them apart. We can't tell the racist from the non-racist. Like, think critically about what you're asking. You're saying, you know, we're going to cancel racist people. So that was the gist of what I said about that on Newsmax, which of course got posted on Twitter and all social media. And they tried to light me up on Twitter, but that was all right. Have Money Talk Mel or at NJGOP Diva, which is where most of my political musings go. But yeah, so that's what I talked about. And I guess there's some people that just really, if they see my black face saying something like someone who says the N-word should not be canceled and buried under the ground or never speak again and should never have their job, like there's something wrong with me. But I believe in the Constitution. And that, like, if we truly want equality, that we have to be equal. That equal is equal. Equal is exactly what that means. So let the man talk and listen to his podcast if you want. Don't listen to his podcast if you don't want. That is the way our country works, and it's a beautiful thing. So at least in my not so humble opinion. John had a really good idea. My friend John had who operates the board and answers the phone when you guys call 98.7 The Coast. Actually, if you did want to call in, the number is 609-522-0987. That's 609-522-0987, and you'll talk to John if you call in. But he had a really good idea, and I don't know why I didn't think of this, because John's smarter than me. We should talk about the Super Bowl. He's like, there's like this big football game this weekend. We should probably talk about. And me not being a sports girl, I knew there was a Super Bowl. I also knew that I would not be watching it until, a couple of pivotal points. Typically, the way I do the Super Bowl is like with a glass of wine, watching social media, and probably watching, the news or something like that. And then when people tell me that, there's good commercials on, or like I Google when the halftime show is going to be, and then I flip over to the halftime show and watch that. That's basically me watching the Super Bowl. But social media does a pretty good job of keeping me abreast of what's going on during the Super Bowl, so I don't have to actually watch football, God forbid. But of course there is a huge money aspect to the whole football thing. And I was like, yeah, that should have crossed my mind there, John. Thanks for the heads up. That should have come to me. But a ridiculous amount of money, in a little last minute show prep, we looked up a few facts about the Super Bowl, and so much money being spent, which you always know this, but just ridiculous amounts of money. And I thought you guys would be interested in hearing the amount of money that's being spent during the Super Bowl. We're talking armed motorcades, $120,000 party tables, $5,000 parking spots. This is according to a report from The Hollywood Reporter. Now, the nerd side of me wants to, of course, say if you have not gone shopping for your Super Bowl accoutrement over the weekend, your guacamole and chips and wings, maybe they'll have a loan officer at the supermarket so that you can take out a loan for your Super Bowl haul, because things are going to be super expensive. There's another recent, of course, inflation report that just came out. We're up to 7.5%. And there are many things that are up much higher than that. If you've been to the supermarket, of course, you are well aware of that. Been to the gas station, you are well aware of that. But back to the Super Bowl and the ridiculous spending. For example, I want to go. After I read this article, I'm like, I want to go. Why don't I have any super fabulously rich friends that I could go to the Super Bowl with? Because clearly you better have a couple bucks if you're going to hang out Super Bowl weekend. For example, Game Day and its surrounding festivities will bring in an estimated 150,000 visitors and will generate up to $477 million in revenue, according to a report by the research firm Micronomics. Now, so that's just kind of the beginning. So Los Angeles added 2,100 hotel rooms. That's not surprising because they knew that the Super Bowl was going to be in LA. The majority of LA hotel rooms, Super Bowl weekend, run about $445 a night. Not bad. If you live anywhere near a resort area, like we here in the Wildwoods, we live in several resort areas. Wildwood is a resort area. We're not too far from Atlantic City, where a $445 room rate is not that much. We live near an island called Stone Harbor, where $444 is probably not a lot. And I would argue there's probably some places in Wildwood that some boutique hotels that'll run you about that much. So that's not. I was like, okay, well, that sounds pretty reasonable. That's not so bad. Until I continued on and found that the properties as Beverly Hills Hotel and the Hotel Bel Air sold out 100% capacity Thursday through Sunday at average room rates at $2,000 a night. That was the average, $2,000 a night. They have parking spots that are costing $5,000 a space to get nearby parking spots. And now, what you have to remember that a lot of this is being sold on the secondary market, not being bought directly from, I don't know, I guess the NFL. I guess those are the people who sell NFL tickets, sell Super Bowl tickets. But on the secondary market, like StubHub, tickets for Game Day about 2 weeks out, averaging $5,300. For a Super Bowl. What kind of game do you want to see that bad? I don't think I've ever been entertained well enough to pay $5,300 for anything. I can't think of it. Anyway. But if you're a huge Super Bowl fan, this is what people are spending. They're spending money on helicopter landings, on 4 armed guard security officers for their motorcycles, luxury SUVs at $1,000 and $1,200 per hour. Big, yes, big, ridiculous money being spent during the Super Bowl. They also say that on Game Day, they expect to sell, this is just one a facility says they expect to sell 9,000 pizzas, 8,000 cheeseburgers, and in the suites, 1,000 pounds of lobster salad, 20,000 taquitos, and 1,000 pounds of pork bellies. That is crazy, but crazy money spent with the Super Bowl. There's going to be, of course, tons and tons of ads. I think I saw somewhere that it said 56 ads for the Super Bowl. So we're going to be barraged with ads, but that's nothing new. NBC sold out of all their ads, spending as much as $7 million for a 30 second ad. That's a lot of beer, Budweiser. Just saying. And crypto's gonna dominate the commercial 30 second spots during the Super Bowl, which is going to be interesting because, as usual, the crypto market's been super volatile. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback about what you thought about the ads and stuff like that. You can usually, like the day before the Super Bowl, you can look at all the ads, and it's probably what I'm going to do. Cheat and do that, and then wait for the halftime show. Just saying. Thank you so much for listening to Money Talk with Melanie. And our guest coming up for the first hour is Nathalie Noisette. She's going to talk to us about Converted, uncover the hidden strategies you need to easily achieve massive credit score success. We'll be back in a few moments.
Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. And in our first hour guest, we have Nathalie Noisette. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She is the author of the book, Converted, Uncover the Hidden Strategies You Need to Easily Achieve Massive Credit Score Success. She is a credit expert and chief credit officer. I am so very glad to have her on the show this evening. And without further ado, Nathalie Noisette. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, that's right, Melanie. Thank you.
I'm always so concerned about that.
I understand.
I'm very glad that to have you on the show this evening. I would love for you to tell the audience a bit about your background.
Yes, ma'am. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to share these insights and serve others in a way that is empowering and educating. So with that being said, like you mentioned, my name is Nathalie. I am a credit expert, a financial strategist, and my background came from 8 years of helping individuals improve their credit, learn about credit. They walk away with so much insight, resources, and when I first journeyed into credit, that wasn't really my intention. I had no background in finance, knew nothing about really money at all. But after just a couple of years of toiling with not being able to get approved, debt to my eyeballs, interest rates out of the world, astronomical interest rates, I was able to help fix my own credit, did a lot of research, trial and error, and then I noticed that a lot of people in my age group were starting to ask questions about credit and wanted to know more and more and more. And with that, I noticed that there was a really big need for real education, real resources that people can use and apply today. And that's how I absolutely journeyed into the world of finance, personal finance, and credit.
Excellent. I love it. And it really is an important topic. Now, what's interesting is one of the things that I teach, I'm an educator by trade, is financial literacy and economics. And I used to teach Dave Ramsey's curriculum. It's not the one I use right now, but he is a very, he's like I don't want to call him an anti-credit person because that's probably too negative of a connotation. But he doesn't believe that you should be using credit. That he thinks that that's a bad thing to do, and that you should try to pay cash for everything in order to maintain your financial health. How do you feel about that?
That's interesting because I've openly criticized Dave Ramsey for his ideas around credit because he, in my opinion, has a very, tone-deaf idea about what credit really is. And I understand his position, just being fair and balanced. I do understand his position. I understand that for many people, credit is a gateway to debt, right? But then you also have to consider the fact that there are people who use credit for building wealth. For example, now there are individuals, let me give you a perfect example, actually. A lot of people in my program, people that work with me directly, what I've done with them is actually get credit card companies to pay them. This is money that it's less risk, that's associated with less risk. And then you also have the fact that with reward points, with cash back rewards, and then now with people being rewarded in crypto, there's even more incentive now, especially with other proper financial channels in place, to actually use credit and make the most of it. For what I feel like Dave Ramsey talks about, for the most part, is that people shouldn't be making large future purchases with interest without a payback plan, without a repayment plan. But if you think about how most people build wealth, they are able to build wealth by borrowing money. And if you understand how this credit and debt system works, you know that all debt isn't bad debt. And as long as you have a good foundation and a good understanding of what it is that you're doing, and understanding the risk that you're assuming as well, credit shouldn't be something that's scary, and it definitely should not be something that is so harshly criticized.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. It's always better to have balance. I mean, he has several examples. I think if for people who want to be scared straight away from using their credit, it's probably good to listen to him in that regard, or just want to be scared into making sure that they use their credit responsibly. Right? That it's probably good to listen to him, but maybe not so much to say, okay, I'm not going to use credit at all ever. I mean, he has examples in his curriculum of people literally saving for their house and paying cash for it, stuff like that. Right. I'm like, wow, like how are you?
I mean, okay, so let's examine that for a second. How many people really would have the ability to do that, right? That's first and foremost. But second of all, a lot of people, especially, well, not so much now, but there was a time when people used to acquire homes in order for it to be a vehicle for wealth, right? You share the equity with the bank. You share the burden of the financial risk that you assume with a bank. And the added benefit is that you do gain the equity on the home, assuming you are to sell the home. So they've used that money to fund things like college, to purchase other homes that turn into rental properties, to start businesses. So it is an avenue where you can use it if you're being strategic, not reckless. And I do agree with him in the fact that recklessness is going to be a problem, right? You're going to, if you're not being responsible with your credit or with your loans, you are going to end up in a position where you can't get out of it. And the deeper you get, the harder it is. And according to his argument, I was once one of those people that he used to warn against, right? But I learned that as negative as it could be, there has to be an upside. It can't all be bad, right?
Sure, and I think you said a very important word earlier, which is to be strategic about it. Right. And I think that the typical consumer is probably not very strategic with how they use credit. You know, we are bombarded from the time we turn 18, you know what I mean, and hit college or wherever, or secondary school or whatever it is we're doing. When we get out of high school, we start getting bombarded, and probably even before we turn 18, before we can legally enter into a contract, we start getting bombarded with credit offers. And it sounds really great if you don't know what you're doing, and if you're not being strategic and thinking about exactly what it is that you're about to do with your credit.
Right, for sure. And I'm actually very happy that I guess the government and some of these financial institutions started to acknowledge the fact that you know, if a senior is coming out of high school, they should not be solicited to in college. And there was legislation that was passed in order to make sure that that no longer happens. Because a lot of kids, especially my age group, where before that legislation was passed, ended up in situations where they were not able to repay those cards. And if they didn't have parents who could support them in that way, then they end up in collections and they end up in debt. And because someone's handing you a credit card with no income to pay it back in most cases, and then you're not educated or empowered on how to use this tool in order to move yourself forward or benefit you at all. So for sure, I do agree, and I do understand that. I think that the government and other authority bodies are starting to know that this can't happen, and there are a lot of resources now that you can use in order to not fall into those situations.
Right. That's very good. Now, I took a look at some of the talking points in your book. I loved the description that they have on Amazon for Converted. Says it's a simple, clear, and concise guide that will transform your thinking about money. It says, gain groundbreaking skills on how to improve your credit score, be savvy with money, and regain control over your finances so you can lead a comfortable life. I like it. That sounds good.
Thank you.
Now, where did you get the title Converted from? And what do you mean when you say converted? Like converted from what to what?
So that's a good question. So when you convert something, you're changing its state. So you convert from a poverty mindset to a wealth mindset. You can convert from poor credit to having great credit. You can convert from not understanding money to having a full understanding of how you want money to work and how you want money to work for you. So when I thought about when I set my intention for what I wanted the book to be, I noticed that the central theme was that if you walk away, if you read the book in its entirety and you understand the basic concepts of credit, it's really easy to understand. And if you do understand it, you will convert how you change, how you look at money and how you approach your credit moving forward, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're up against a commercial break. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. My guest this hour is Nathalie Noisette. She's talking to us about her book, Converted, Uncover the Hidden Strategies You Need to Easily Achieve Massive Credit Score Success. Very excited to have her on the show this evening. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
This is important because it's your money. Your money. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, and we are on with my guest this hour, Nathalie Noisette. She's a credit expert and author of the book Converted, Uncover the Hidden Strategies You Need to Easily Achieve Massive Credit Score Success. And we were talking to her about different credit strategies that you can use, like the title of the book says, to have credit score success. There are many different ways that you can use credit. Credit can certainly be a detriment to some people, and some people have learned the hard way with their credit. But her book Converted talks all about how we can go from being credit duds to credit studs, right?
Yes, I love that.
You can use that. That one's on me.
Thanks, appreciate it.
So one of the things that your book talks about is that there's a possibility that you could have unlimited credit access. Now that sounds crazy to me, and I was like, what is she talking about? Like, so how is that without giving away the store as far as what's in the book?
Right. So I believe I'm a strategist at heart, and I like to think about what the end goal is, and depending on what your end goal is, there is a solution for almost everything, right? So I thought about almost every common everyday scenario that I could apply credit to, and I realized that with the resource section specifically, you can have great credit despite not having great credit in the past. And that's mostly what I mean by unlimited credit access. If your end goal is simply to be approved, I outline exactly what a credit matrix is, what they look for when they're approving individuals, and they being creditors or lenders, what they're looking for, understanding that everybody has different requirements when they are trying to lend to you. Also, I outline resources that that help you save money while also building credit. Most people don't know that that's an option. So if saving is of interest to you, then being able to save money and build credit simultaneously is absolutely possible. You don't have to pick, and that's why. But that's another example of what I mean by unlimited credit access. There are also resources. One of my favorite is the manufactured spending. You can be very intentional with how you spend money And there are strategies around that will allow you, like I mentioned before, to have credit card companies pay you, and you do not have to pay $1 in interest. And I'm going to safely assume that credit card companies hate when I talk about this one, because you still get to access credit. You don't have to worry about going into debt, because then you get all the rewards that are being offered to you. And now that banks are, dare I say, drowning, they're only going to increase the rewards that are being offered to consumers year by year, month by month. So this is an even most ideal time to tap into credit and tap into all the resources and rewards that are available to you if you don't have great credit now.
Interesting. You're saying this is a good time of year to do that?
No, good time in our economy, in our economy's history.
Really? Now, why do you say it's a good time in our economy?
You know, first and foremost, there are like millions of individuals in our country who are just credit invisible. They could not apply for anything, and they couldn't qualify for anything if they tried. They don't understand credit. They don't even have a bank account, right, in order to be able to pay down a credit card to begin with. With the rise of things like digital currencies, which I believe the U.S. is actually in the works of right now, having its own digital currency, the people who are not on board now will get left behind. So if there is any time now, if there is any time to try to sort out your personal finances, understand what your real tangible goals are, and try to successfully achieve them, it would be now, because the world is shifting, money is shifting, digital currencies are popping up every single day. The world is becoming more technological, becoming more digital. That's the way the world is trending. So while it's still at the inception point of all of this, I think credit is still important now, because we're looking at almost, I want to say, that I know of, 7 cards and companies who reward you for using your credit card in crypto. That's only going to happen more and more as these cryptocurrencies gain more utility and these smart contracts continue to be more and more intricate. So the time is now. If not, and you wait too long, you're not going to be able to access credit in the future, or it will be more difficult to if you have bad credit to get good credit.
Wow. Now that's a little. I'm afraid of that on like a ton of levels. When you say, well, because that we're moving toward a cashless society, and I've had these conversations a couple of times over the years about the cashless society, and I think if we learned anything from COVID, in my opinion, it is the ability of the government to overreach. Past, we live in the United States where we're supposed to be governed by the Constitution as the highest law of the land, and COVID just kind of allowed the powers that be to way overreach in several areas, in my opinion. And part of that is moving toward a cashless society is kind of part of that plan, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. But there are, there are other countries that kind of have similar, like China comes to mind, like countries that are not as free, and that is being excessively kind to China, that have these kind of societies, but it also gives the government a lot more power over our lives, and that is a little scary. But it's not the first time that I've heard this. I wouldn't even call it a theory. I think that you're probably right, that we are moving toward a more cashless, digital society, and more people are going to continue to be invisible when we move to that kind of society, which is kind of funny, because that's what crypto, kind of part of the goal of crypto is kind of to eliminate that. Right. Ironically, right? Right. But as soon as the government gets involved, just like, many things the government gets involved in, it turns to crud.
And to be honest, I noticed that some people are afraid of this conversation, and I encourage you to be empowered by it. Pay attention, notice what's going on, and use this information to fuel and put some fire, some pep in your step, even to make those changes, because your entire future depends on it. And this is not fear mongering. My intention is not to make you afraid. It's to raise awareness. if you really pay attention and you notice how the world is shifting, you don't pivot, you will get left behind for sure.
I tend to agree with you in that, and I know 5 years ago and crypto had been around for a while, but not so much in social media. It had kind of been like a thing that people kind of whispered about to each other, but nobody was talking about in the mainstream. And I would have guests on the show just beginning to talk about crypto, and it had some really altruistic goals. And right. it seems to be, like you said, moving to a cashless society, which in and of itself is not bad. But when you look at other societies that have that much digital control, that kind of scares me. And I just hope that the powers that be are going to be able to work that out and not take away our liberties in the process. That's what, is kind of frightening about that. Now, one of the things that your book teaches is how to read your credit report. And I always thought the credit reports were fairly straightforward, in my opinion, but maybe not so much. Maybe there are certain nuances to reading your credit report that you should be looking for.
Yes, for sure. So whenever first of all, let me backtrack a little bit. There are a lot of data points on a credit report, and a lot of consumers don't know necessarily what to look for to make sure that these items are correct. Whenever you see an item on your credit report, someone reported that on your behalf. Usually there's some human intervention, and not all of the information is always correct or up to date. So that is why when you look at your report, you want to make sure that you understand it to make sure that this information being reported about you is accurate and it's not outdated.
That's a good point. And do you think that most people remember, particularly when you get, up there in age? Like, do you do you remember a lot of the stuff that you've done financially, unless you're really tracking it on your own, which I don't think a lot of people do?
Right. No, a lot of people forget, but luckily, a lot of these a lot of these items, especially negative items, depending on what they are, fall off of your credit report after 7 to 10 years. So there's not very much to keep track of outside of making sure that everything being reported up to date, like actually now in real time or in the last 2 years, are accurate, because they could affect the lender's decision to extend credit to you.
And probably you definitely want to keep an eye on it as well, in case somebody else has taken out credit in your name or something like that, and you haven't really noticed. That's just kind of another good reason to kind of monitor your credit report and make sure everything's okay.
For sure.
Yeah, you don't want to find out later on somebody has taken out credit in your name and you didn't realize it. There's the closer we move to a more cashless society and a more digital world, unfortunately, that just opens up a brand new black market for scammers.
Yes, that is very true. I actually just recently had to deal with something along the lines of identity theft, and if I believe strongly that if I wasn't someone who almost obsessively checked my credit report, it might have gotten a lot further than it did, for sure.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you got to be very careful about identity theft. Phishing and email scams and telephone scams just has really gotten a lot more sophisticated. So even, the smartest person can fall for some of these scams that are out here messing with your credit report and just messing with your money in general.
Yeah.
Right. Now, you mentioned in your book about credit scoring algorithms. And I'm assuming that you're talking about, the systems and the way your credit score is calculated. And a lot of people, I was actually watching a video the other day that said a lot of people don't know that they think that there's only 3 credit reporting agencies, but apparently there's hundreds. And depending on what you're applying for determines which scoring agencies that those people are using. And I was like, say what now? You mean there aren't only 3? Yeah.
Yeah, no, there are way more than 3, and they hold all 3. Well, the big 3, they hold mostly your financial information, and then there are others that hold, like, for example, LexisNexis is a data furnisher. They sometimes report to Experian or like the bank if you were going to open a bank account. These companies, they hold information about you in order to know things like old addresses that impact your credit report. They might hold on to information like old phone numbers or old employers or old bank accounts, or just depending on what it is that they're looking for. There's a company that holds all of your information. There's a data furnisher that holds your medical records and collections in that area. There's a data furnishing company that holds your rental records. So anywhere you've ever rented or applied through like some kind of lease with a state. There are agencies that hold a lot of data around you, and just to not only verify who you are, but also to make sure that if they are looking at your credit report, this is how they're verifying some of that information. If you were to undergo like an investigation or a dispute online or a dispute through the credit bureaus, this is how they're sourcing that information. A lot of it isn't factored into your score, though. That's the common misconception. Like, oh, there's these other bureaus. Most of them hold your data. They're just housing who you are in a big picture way. But the actual credit report and the credit score only really holds mostly your financial information, and then the other bureaus kind of give more context, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I guess it's kind of a way of companies or different entities being able to cross-check your information.
For sure. So let's say, for example, I have a collection account on my credit report, and I ask the credit bureaus to investigate that report. In most cases, they won't call the creditor and ask for information. What they'll do is they'll reach out to, let's say, LexisNexis. If I ask them to update an address, they're going to say, hey, LexisNexis, do you really have an address for this person? Is this account tied to this address for this person? We just want to verify that this account actually does belong to this person, instead of actually contacting the collections company and requesting real, tangible information that this is my account, I acquired it, and I'm supposed to pay it, but I didn't. So that's why one of the strategies that we outline in the book is that if you are going to go into a dispute and you are not sure if something on your credit report is being reported accurately or if it's outdated, to suppress your data from being shared with the external bureaus so that the investigation can actually be complete, and they're not doing this roundabout investigation by just trying to plug in 2 data points to verify that this is actually your account.
Wow. I didn't realize there were that many other places that held your data. And as a matter of fact, I'm a licensed insurance broker, and I didn't even know that there was a medical database like that until I got licensed to sell insurance. And I was like, what? They were like, yeah, there's a whole computer database with every medication that you've ever been prescribed is in a database somewhere. And no one, and that gets back to what I was saying about the government and government overreach. I don't know about you, but no one asked me if they could. Yeah. Now, I'm sure we probably signed something along the way somewhere that said, sure, go ahead and put, whenever they, the 12-page, do you agree to that? And you click sure, I agree to that. That's probably somewhere in there saying that you agree to have your data held on to. It's crazy. One last thing I want to ask you about before you go is about how credit repair can hurt you. That surprises me.
Yes. So, unfortunately, there are unscrupulous people out there who are conducting credit repair that is damaging. And one of the things that they do is they will try to file a police report and say that the identity had been stolen in order to dispute the negative items on the report. And that piece of information would almost expedite the dispute or the investigation process because you appear to be compromised. So that's one thing that people do. The other people do something called a CPN, which is a credit profile number, which is also illegal. It shouldn't be done. And if you get caught doing either one, it is punishable by fine or, in some circumstances, jail time. Or some people just report to the state or the government, like the FTC or some other governing body that looks over consumer rights, that they've been compromised when they weren't, in order to try to receive, again, information that would support a dispute and expedite those negative items being deleted, which, again, is illegal because the government does actually investigate it, and it is counted as, like, efforts on their part. So it's like, imagine calling the cops and reporting a fake case. It's kind of like that.
So,
right.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Now,
like a Jesse Smollett situation.
Right. Allegedly, of course.
Air quote that and allegedly say something in that vein. So it's not fair and it's not right. And there are consumers who are actually being harmed by things like this. So you're clogging up the system also, which could lead to some fines as well. So it's just better to just do things the right way. Like you mentioned in the book, I outline a lot of these strategies that are above board, and you can use them to try to work towards your benefit. If these negative items are hurting you, but you know you actually assume them, I've given you negotiation tactics that you can use to try to get them reduced and to try to get them deleted on the back end. There's so many other options that don't involve things that can actually harm you.
What now? Okay, I have a dumb question. Why would a credit repair company use tactics like that, besides the obvious,
right,
in order to, quote unquote, fix your credit? Like, why would you? Because you're eventually going to get caught, I would think, and have a whole problem.
You know what? I'm sorry, I can't answer that question because I don't engage in those activities. I can't answer that.
That sounds crazy to me.
Yeah, I agree. I don't understand it. And there are ways. I'm sure it's like a business thing. You know, people need fast results. Fast money sometimes compromises people, or fast results sometimes compromises people. So it really is a matter of just not doing things above board. But again, I can't really speak to why someone would do that, and I don't want to think about why someone would do that.
I can imagine someone doing it for themselves, like saying, okay, I want to get some stuff off my credit report, so I'm going to do this, like, for myself. What I don't see is how someone develops their entire business model behind that. That's the part that I'm like, wait, why would you do that? That does not make any sense to me. That does not. You have to be super greedy and don't really mind the possibility of going to jail. It would have to be those two things that would be. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say I don't think I look great in bright orange.
Me neither. Me neither. No, I can't. I can't do time. There's a lot of things I can do. Time is not one of them. Jail, I am not built for. I am with you. Tell people where they can get the book, how they can follow you on social media or anything like that.
Yes, ma'am. So the book is found on convertedcredit.com. Again, that's convertedcredit.com, exactly how it sounds, no fancy spelling. And if you want to follow me for lives and updates, regular updates, about, new resources, legislation that's passed and how it impacts you, you can find us on Credit Conversion on most social media sites. That's Credit Conversion.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show. For those of you just tuning in, that was Nathalie Noisette. She's a credit expert, and we were just talking about her book, Converted, Uncover the Hidden Strategies You Need to Easily Achieve Massive Credit Score Success. Pick it up if you want to find out how to achieve credit score success. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You have a great night. We'll be right back at the end of these messages.
Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. Our first hour guest was, wow, Melanie. Wow, was Nathalie Noisette. Sorry about that. She was a credit score expert, and she talked to us about different strategies that you can use to increase your credit score, If you missed that first hour, be sure to check out Money Talk with Melanie on the podcast, which will be posted on 98.7 The Coast website and on all of my social media at Money Talk Mel, at Money Talk with Melanie on Facebook, and I think that's it. Actually on LinkedIn too, if you can get in there. I don't really do too much stuff on LinkedIn besides like super duper professional stuff, but I do post my podcast there. So you can check out Money Talk with Melanie if you can find me on LinkedIn and you want to hook up. I will usually connect with any professional profile. If you follow me on IG, just don't DM me with foolishness. Can I just say that? Like, that's just like a rash of just foolishness on IG or on Instagram. Like, the gram is just a mess. I'm about to, can I like delete my DMs on IG? They're ridiculous. I don't know if anybody else is finding that issue with IG. And can I just say, listen, I would be remiss. I know I mentioned Black History Month last show, that it's Black History Month. Today is February 10th, and it's still Black History Month. By the way, I want to just dispel a little myth right now that, some people have an issue with the fact that Black History Month is in February and it's the shortest month. You guys do know that Black History Month used to be like Black History Week, and it was in February, and they just like extended it to a month. Like, there's no shade. I know everybody wants to find shade in everything, and like, everybody's dissing the minority, but that's not how it went. That's not how it went. I just felt like I should make that PSA, that public service announcement. And I do have a policy complaint about the way our tax dollars are being spent. I can't just leave the show and not complain about the Biden administration. Like, I'm going to do that. Has anybody heard this? Has anybody heard that they're now providing smoke kits to help people who are drug addicted, including, ladies and gentlemen, crack pipes? Now, here's the part that I have issue with. That part of the reason why they're doing this, according to the Biden administration, is for racial equity. Much like, and the Biden administration said this, much like Phil Murphy, the governor here in New Jersey, said that one of the reasons they were legalizing marijuana was for racial equity. I have a fundamental issue with every time a racial equity, somebody tries to help, and it's usually someone on the left, tries to help black folks, and it's Black History Month, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but every time somebody tries to help black folks, it's always something negative, like legalizing marijuana, which I think is something like you're saying that, a lot of black people smoke weed, so we need to do this to help black people. Like, it's not a good message, is what I'm saying. And politicians on the left seem to do it all the time. How can we most help black people? You know what? Legalize weed. How can we help black people? You know what? Give them some crack pipes. Like, that is not, and if you've noticed, if you're on social media is lighting President Biden up with memes and everything else. So if you're wondering what all the crack pipe memes are about regarding President Biden, they're not about his son. No. They're not about Hunter. They are about their latest racist policy to help black people out. Free crack pipes. Thanks so much. Thank you. And during Black History Month, I was sitting around thinking, as a black woman, what do I really need in my life? How could my life improve as a black woman? And do you know that free crack pipes never even crossed? Like, that just didn't come to mind, didn't even pop into my head? Or ways that people of color, their communities could be helped? But this is what your tax dollars are being spent on. This is the absolute ridiculous that our tax dollars are being spent on. And it's so offensive. It's just like everyone should be offended. And why are we not spending that on drug treatment programs for people who, like, instead of like helping them? I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm very confused. And the racial equity part? Really? politicians say this with a straight face and like all people of color, all black people, because whenever they say racial equity, it's always a euphemism for helping black people, typically. And how? Why? Why is it always something having to do with something negative? It is never, rarely, ever having to do with anything positive. Never. It's always something like that. You know what? Give them more crack pipes. That's great. Happy Black History Month to me and my fellow black people that are celebrating this month. Have your taxpayer funded free crack pipe. That's just great. Anyway, rant over. Sorry. I'm not really sorry. My second hour guest is John, the producer, is looking at me like, what? I'm serious. Look it up, John. Google it while I'm doing this intro. My second hour guest is going to be Douglas French. He's President Emeritus of the Mises Institute. Fabulous guy. He wrote this article that I came across when I was popped onto the Mises Institute website, called Rising Rents and Cheap Money Flowing. So why are apartment prices soaring? And, I thought about our own area where I live locally here in Cape May County, New Jersey, where rents are very expensive and it's hard to find some affordable housing. And if you watch the national news, you'll see that's kind of a trend. You'll see that the housing market is absolutely on fire. It's really just generally hard to find affordable housing these days. So I thought it was, it's a great article. He also wrote a book about, what's better, housing versus rent. And he makes a pretty decent argument for maybe renting being the way to go. So I thought it was an interesting topic. So we'll be talking to him in a couple of minutes. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about the good old our friends at the IRS. You know how much I enjoy. And listen, if I'm here at 98.7 The Coast on Money Talk with Melanie long enough for us to have a change in administrations, and hopefully we'll have a Republican next president, I will be the first one to give a Republican president the heat if they deserve it. But right now, the Republican the administration in the White House right now is just they're okay. I knew they were going to be terrible, in my opinion. Like, I knew I wouldn't have a high opinion of them. I really completely underestimated the level of horrible that I thought that he was going to be. Just completely tone deaf and not paying attention. It's just really crazy. But anyway, the latest, one of the things that the IRS has tax expert, the tax mama, is going to be on the show. Her name is Eva Rosenberg. She's been on the show when it was just a podcast several times, but she's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks, I hope. I have to book her. But she posted an article today about how one of the things the IRS is doing to help us is to not send, I guess they have these automated collections notices, or making you aware when you've made a mistake on your taxes, or you owe money, you paid too much, or you paid too little, whatever. But they have a lot of automated notices. Well, they're temporarily suspending those notices so that they can focus on tax returns because it's tax season. My first question, and I'm going to ask Eva this when she comes on the show. She said she would come on the show even though it's tax season. She's super busy. And she also runs a tax preparer's school. She's the dean of that school. She's fantastic, and she knows like any and everything, all things taxes. But I'm going to ask her, how does that help? If it's an automated, if these are automated letters, it would seem, now I don't know the intricacies of the IRS's computer systems, but it would seem if they want to stop automated letters from coming, that probably like one person has to go in and probably unclick a box that says don't send those automated letters anymore. Like, I don't know. I could be wrong. A lot of times, believe it or not, government agencies tend to be far behind when it comes to technology. I know people who work for government agencies, and that's typically one of their complaints is that their technology tends to be behind. So maybe it's more complicated than that. But one of the first things that I thought was, well, how is that really going to help if it's an automated letter? Like, are they not really who's manually doing that, and how much labor does that actually save? I don't know. Don't completely understand that. So I'm trying to figure that one out. In the meantime, I'm also wondering, here's some reasons, I wanted to tell you guys this, why your tax return could get flagged by the IRS. The IRS. And here's the thing. I don't know if this is still the case, and I'll ask the tax mama when she comes on, but usually it takes 3 years for the IRS to catch up with a mistake when you make a mistake on your tax return. So, like, if you're doing your own taxes and you make a mistake, they usually will eventually find it, but it tends to take about 3 years. Now, I don't know if it takes longer or shorter now, but it takes them a while to find that kind of stuff. So here's some reasons why your tax return could get flagged. First of all, just know that they don't audit a lot of people. Pretty slim chance that, your average Joe is getting audited by the IRS. But there are some definite reasons why you could get flagged. One red flag to the IRS are excessive write-offs when it's compared to your income. So if you make $25,000 a year and you have $75,000 in write-offs, that's probably going to flag the IRS that there's something going on. If you have unreported earnings, if you're making money somewhere and you did not put it on your taxes, you're going to red flag the IRS to give you an audit and have somebody come knock on your door. You don't want that. Refundable tax credits and things like that, another red flag for the IRS. One of the things that a tax expert says and recommends, he says you're only as good as your receipts. This is according to John Alpisa, who's a CPA and a partner at PKF O'Connor Davies LLP. He says you're only as good as your receipts are, and that's true. So if you get audited, know that you need to have receipts for all the stuff that you write off. And who does? I mean, and this is why I say to people, once you get a real job, get a tax preparer. It's just worth it. It's just worth it. I did my own taxes, I don't know, for a little while, but man, it starts to get to be a mess. And it's not that I don't have the talent or the gift to do it. I don't have the patience anymore. I just don't have it. So, and you miss one detail and you could just get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. It's just a good idea to get a professional. And Eric Jessup out of DC, who is messaging me, says it also takes a while to rack up penalties, which is true. That is very true. That is an excellent point. But it's tax season. As soon as January hits, you have to start worrying about that. I know we talked about all the money surrounding the Super Bowl earlier, all the money that was going to be spent. There's one article that talked about how much overall more your Super Bowl foods are going to cost you. Just know you're paying 14% more this year. And that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if you're spending, I don't know, $200 on the Super Bowl and you're spending 14% more, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. And my theory is $5 is a lot of money if you don't have it. You know what I mean? If you don't have it, then it's a lot of money. So I just keep that in mind and keep your eye on the policy. Last week I had a guest on who we talked about inflation and the role that the Federal Reserve, has in trying to stave off inflation. And the more I read about our inflationary situation and how we can kind of get rid of it, the more I'm finding the experts say we might be stuck with these high prices for a little while. And there's not going to be much the Fed can do outside of triggering a recession, which is a really scary thought. I don't like hearing that, and I hope that they are wrong. I ran into another kind of sad article that says the American dream of the middle class isn't what it used to be. That's sad news, because there's some assumptions and expectations that come with being middle class. I don't even know what middle income means anymore. Like, to be considered middle class, what income that is. how much money that is, because I feel like it moves. Like, how much money is that? You might think that you're middle class. Okay, so a family, I just Googled it real quick. A family earning between $32,000, $48, and $53,400 is considered lower middle class. That makes sense. That's about what I thought. Upper middle class. Okay, so regular middle class is $53,000 to $106,000 is considered middle class. Upper middle class is $100,000 to about $400,000. You're considered upper middle class. So they're saying that middle class people just are not making out like they used to. One of the reasons why they feel that way is because they feel there's a lack of supporting policies, governmental policies in place to address middle income people. I tend to agree with that. I think that there are tons, and I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, that there are tons and tons of policies that support the poor. But here's what I will also say about that. While I'm saying there's tons of programs to support the poor, the thing that the government does that's messed up about that is if you are in a situation where you're not destitute, the system is almost designed to make you destitute in order to avail yourself of a problem. Like, I know a person who was in a situation where they really just needed one mortgage payment. Like they were behind, they ran into a tight financial situation. That person, there's no government program to help a middle-class person who runs into a tight situation, who's been working all their life, who's never been on any kind of government program whatsoever, to just get them out of a tight spot where they need $1,000 one-shot hit. That government program doesn't exist. There's no government program like that. And I would argue that there needs to be. And remember, all of this is very important because it's your money. Have a great night.